All right, hey everyone, it's Micah here with you for a few minutes and just talking about revised selling idea, reselling ideas, right? If you're an eBay or maybe other kinds of resellers, in person or you have like a physical retail location maybe or something like that. But mainly talking about online reselling and with eBay because that's what I mostly have done and not really necessarily a ton, right? Maybe sold a couple hundred products and maybe a few $1,000s. So I'm not necessarily giving you any particular key niche. I'm just talking about a few of the ideas and mindset and brainstorming, especially for a beginner, and just giving you some ideas on what you can do to maybe start your eBay store, for example, right? And plenty of other people to get other ideas from too. I mean, there's a lot of little elements to learn. At the same time, you don't need to know a whole lot to get started, right? The main thing is to have some kind of inventory that you're planning on trying to sell, right? Whether it's new or used, some kind of physical inventory, probably, right? So I don't know if you can sell some virtual services of some kind. Maybe you can, but as far as like some physical inventory, right? So usually some used goods, but maybe you have access to some new goods of some kind or something that you bought and don't it turned out you don't want it and you want to resell it. But the idea is to how would you get more visibility on eBay, right? With the mindset of selling a good quantity of things and selling stuff that maybe you don't normally might not think of reselling, and why to even start your eBay store. One reason why for some people really is just some extra income. Maybe it's not necessarily to be like you're thinking of it as a full-time business. Maybe you are, but you're probably gonna need a lot of inventory, right? You need storage. You're gonna need to build up. You're gonna need to learn things. You need to learn about products, right? You need to learn about how to list well, right? So there's a lot of factors, but what are some of the main things? And the main thing is having those first inventory pile, right? Maybe it's just a couple of items, right? Are they likely to sell fast? Well, it depends on what they are, right? If you're selling like, a recent iPhone for a normal price, then probably going to sell pretty quick, right? If you're selling some piece of clothing that you've had for 3 years that's not a popular brand, it might sell, but it could take a year or two, right? Maybe it's it depends on what you price it at. And how well you list it, the visibility of your listing. What does your listing look like? What's the image of your listing? Is your listing well done? Is it complete? Do you show measurements of your items? Do you give good descriptions, right? Are you good descriptions, right, that show up accurate and convert well, so that way when people go to search for them, they actually buy the product, a reasonable percentage of the time. Because eBay probably looking at a number of metrics, and I don't claim to know the insides of eBay, right? I'm just giving you some insight from an outside, a layman's perspective, right? So the idea there is just saying, hey, what would get me more visibility on eBay? Probably a decent looking listing. I won't say it's absolutely strict rule. You have to be perfect about your listing in every way. Some people recommend having a white background on your every listing. I would say that's a good idea for the most part. You want to get a good, clean look, and maybe to increase your visibility with some search results. Like if you want your eBay listing to show up in other directories, like for example, Google Shopping, right? Which is, I don't know how many searches they get compared to just eBay alone, but I imagine it could be a bit more just because of the quantity of searches that, Google gets, right? But maybe that could also go viral in some other areas. Like for example, people put links to little affiliate links on their websites that might show some eBay listings, right? They might be selling shirts on their website, but it also has some links to some eBay listings for whatever they get a little percentage as an affiliate or something like that. I don't claim to know exactly, but it ain't meant to be any legal advice in here. So I recommend, advising, anything that's legal related to talk to your own attorney, right? And so, but the idea there is to do your listings well, good descriptions, right? And to also price your items reasonably, right? Where like your client's not totally turned off and they're not going to buy it because it's just too expensive, right? But also at the same time, not so cheap, and then sometimes that it could maybe be off-putting. Your client, your person looking at the listing could just be thinking, hey, wait a minute, something's wrong with this. Why is it so inexpensive? And at the same time, you want to be making your cost of goods back, whatever that cost of goods. Maybe if it's something that you've used, like some item that you've owned, right, and you're thinking, hey, I want to sell this item and get another one, or I don't need this item anymore, right? The tools, just whatever, around the house, kitchen appliances, electronics, right? Maybe you don't use anymore, or you want to upgrade, right? So you could resell those items on eBay. And if you think about it, like if you want to start your eBay, you might be thinking, I don't have that many items. And if you're new, you're going to think, oh, well, listing items is going to be a little bit of a learning process. It's going to be a gradual process. You get better with different kinds of items as you go. But what are some of the things to take in mind when we first start, right? When we first start, taking our items to list them, you're going to want to be able to weigh them, right? So that's a good factor, is having scale, right? Also probably going to be able to clean them up good. You want to think, hey, I want to build a clean way and measure this item, right? And a clean way and measure. Right, and also want to kind of examine the item as you're cleaning and weighing and measuring it, and just in general, like, hey, what is this? Where's this? And maybe is there any labels on the item? Is there any inscriptions? Any kind of labels? If it's clothing, obviously there might be multiple labels, right? In the neckline, maybe on the side, maybe there's multiple that look good for any labels. And take note of what's on the label, like, is reasonably, just mentally. Is it made in India? Is this machine washable? Is this cotton? What is it? What is this? About part numbers or a model number here that I can see clearly, stuff like that, right? Take mental note of that, right? So those are a few things. And when you make your listing, you might be thinking, I want to take some pictures, right? And take some good pictures, right? So like you said, white background is ideal, and you might use different ways to do that, different ways to achieve that, like a whiteboard or a light box, right? It might be for smaller items, but really kind of like a whiteboard or a bigger, maybe two whiteboards, one in the background and one on the floor. Maybe you need, like a cardboard that's totally white, or one of those whiteboards you can get from like a Walmart. You might need two of them or something like that. It's different ways you can make a white background, a pretty clean background. You can also use the AI image, editing that, is provided with eBay, for example. So it'll make a white background for you, but at the same time that might show some feathering, some kind of aberration, some artifacts that you might not necessarily want with some of your pictures. So that could be kind of touch and go. I don't necessarily use that as much myself. I used to more, but I kind of found that just taking a good close-up picture with my phone, a good phone, right, is really good for just getting up good pictures. And that means also good lighting as much as possible. So ideally you have a light that's right over like what you're taking a picture of, and even some lighting from the sides to prevent shadowing, and that's ideal, right? Maybe you can't get the lighting perfect in the beginning. Just do what you can to get a well-lit area, ideally with a white background. Is that strict? No, I mean, you can take a picture of something right where it's at, and maybe somebody sees that picture in the listing and it looks good. Maybe it shows up somewhere. Maybe they're going to eBay and searching for that item. It depends on what the item is. Is the item something that, there's a lot of it on eBay? There's things to check, maybe, with a lot of items. Maybe you don't necessarily check everything right away. They'll get your listing up to a degree. Just get your listing up. And then you can kind of edit from there, right? You can relist it from there. Now, there's different levels of eBay. There's free and just totally free, which is, just having an eBay account, and you can list stuff, and, you pay some fees and so forth. You pay what we call listing fees, more of those generally. Depends on how many things you're listing, right? You might consider eventually, maybe not right away, but getting a basic eBay store, for example, which is a few dollars a month. Like I think about 25 or so a month. Maybe the rates have changed right now, but that's something to consider soon. That allow you to have more listings, because you might build up a bit of listings if you're doing a bit of it, right? And you might be thinking, hey, I want to get rid of some old stuff I don't need anymore, and it's a good way to sell it, right? Or the stuff I don't want, or maybe I want to upgrade, right? I want to just, some old clothes, or just some appliances or electronics or something like that, right? That you could list them on eBay, but ideally you want to make it look good. So that means kind of having a pile of stuff that you're ready to list at any given time. It's not just going totally random. And, that means you kind of want to double up on stuff that you might not need anymore. Maybe you want to get the replacement before you sell the item, knowing that you might be holding on to that item for a little while, right? And that's kind of investing a little bit of money into, not necessarily more inventory, but, maybe you want to upgrade some items in your home, right? Or so that's a good way to maybe do it. Maybe some cases you want to just try to sell the item first before you replace it with something upgraded or newer, right? Maybe they want to get a new webcam, and thinking, oh, I want to sell this one here. It doesn't have. I want to get something with some higher features or something like that, or I've had this one for a long time or whatever, so I could list it, and maybe I could use it, and maybe I could sell it. And then, it's a type of item I could probably use it for a little while. I mean, ain't gonna, unless something happens to it. And then if I do, I can always change the listing, right? At the same time, for the most part, kind of ideally putting stuff in the pile. It's ready to sell. Everything's ready to go. It's just not like you're not using it. It's, for the most part, right? But it's not a totally strict rule. It depends on what it is, right? And the description you're saying in, the listing, or list an honest listing, right, that shows any defects in your pictures. Take a good amount of pictures, and I recommend taking multiples of each pictures. I know it's hard to make anybody think of what this object, how many pictures can I take of this object? I can only, there's only two sides to this object. I can only take 2, 3, 4, 5 pictures, man. Just take multiple angles. Do whatever you can to get multiple angles. You might want to change the main picture later. You might want to have multiple main pictures to change on that item later. It might be up for a little while in your listings. So you might think, hey, I want to change that. And let me know if you need these tips help you. I'm not saying that this is like all, the best way to do eBay, but what it's allowed me so far is sell a couple hundred items, and also to maintain so far at least 100% satisfaction rate, or 100% review rate, whatever it is, and top seller status, right? And only maybe had 1 or 2 returns, and maybe 3 at the tops so far, right? So, and they weren't for any nefarious reasons, but just minor mistakes. So you want to be able to list well, like you say, good descriptions so people get what they expect. Less likely to get a return, right? That means, like with our clothes, for example, you want to list some clothes, like you said, you want to clean stuff up first. You might want to take some tape or a lint roller to your items real quick before you're listing. You might have 5 pieces of clothes you're going to list. You're thinking, I'm going to list these 5 or 10 items. And that might take you a few minutes just doing that, especially with like items like clothes, because you might have to, kind of do a few things that are, at first might seem like, oh, this is too much work. And it is a little bit of work. I mean, if you have other ways to make a bit more money, you might be thinking that's your main bread and butter. Maybe you're not necessarily thinking of this as business, but rather to replace some stuff that you currently own, right? So the idea is to clean that stuff up well before you take the pictures a little bit, right? Depends on what it is, but for the most part, you might have a couple of tools handy to clean stuff, right? Like a vacuum with a duster brush, and maybe even some kind of brush is good for lint and removing hair and lint and stuff like that. They could be on certain clothing items, for example, right? So you can just quickly clean it up pretty well. Maybe it's not perfect, but probably a lot better, especially as a used item, right? In many cases, it make it look a lot better than what it normally would if you just didn't really think about it very much, right? Maybe even take some tape or a lint roller and pull off any extra lint and stuff like that, right? Maybe you don't have to necessarily make your clothes look perfect. Like they have to be laundered and totally, if they use clothes, for example, right? But just show what they are. They should be reasonable. I mean, I usually have stains on your shirts or something like that. I mean, if it has some kind of permanent stain, make sure you show pictures of any defects, holes or stains if you're planning on selling something. And I wouldn't underestimate it, believe it or not, almost anything I would list, but at the same time, you might be a little bit, use some judgment. Maybe you don't want to list tiny items, but you might have some stuff that you don't necessarily want to throw away. Maybe some good cables, charge cables. We want to upgrade your charge cables. You might sell them for $5 or $10 a piece, right? List them. And maybe you only sell 1 or 2 of them right away. Maybe you get a few bucks for them, and it allows you to pay for any replacements you got, right? And it also allows you to make more sales on eBay. It shows eBay that you're making transactions. They're making some money off of your account. They're thinking, well, let me keep promoting this person. You get more transactions. You get more positive feedback over time. It gives you more credibility to overall help you sell some of your bigger items, right? That's the reason why you even list almost every item that don't underestimate it. Right, put them in your pile. Maybe do 3 to 5 items at a time, maybe up to 10, right? Maybe doing a bit could be a little exhausting, a little bit mentally exhausting, right? You're doing a bit of listings. You're having to do a little bit of research with each one. And there's different ways you could do it, right? You can take pictures and upload it to your computer. Like I used to use the phone most of the time, right? I'll use the phone, pretty good, snappy phone, ideally. A phone that has, it's reading, like I use an S24, for example, just making this video even. But, has a decent amount of memory, so it's going to be pretty snappy, ideally. But any phone could do the trick. It's not like you need a powerful phone to do eBay, right? And, just a phone with a decent camera, right? And you can take pictures that are maybe lower resolution that still look good, because you don't want to take, like, again, there's different factors to, if you upload too low a resolution, you might not be able to open up the picture wider if you're trying to zoom in on it when you're loading it to eBay, for example. You edit your pictures in eBay, right? I might take those pictures on the phone, right? Multiple pictures of each item, a good number of extra pictures, more pictures than I think it needs. Taking measurements. I have a tape measure handy, right? Have a tape measure handy when you're taking pictures of the item. Take regular pictures of the items, but then also take a good few measurements, whatever it is. If it's a clothing item, if it's pants, take a picture of the measurement of the exact inseam on the inside of the pant leg, for example. That's important to a lot of people. And, you might not get that right the first few listings. You might miss a few things. That's okay, right? you'll get better as you list more items, and you can go back and re-edit some of your other items. Maybe they get some visibility, maybe they don't get very much visibility, or they don't get many looks because you only listed some items that weren't like super high desirable items. Maybe over time they will, but at the same time you keep in listing mode. Start listing more of the items that you potentially want to resell. Right? And if you're not sure, you can still list them for a higher price. Leave them there. Maybe someone buys them, maybe they don't. Maybe you have a little bit of profit if they do, and you have enough profit to replace, or maybe that's a good amount of money for you to say, oh, okay, it's worth selling, whatever it is, right? Other items, you might be thinking, hey, I want to get rid of this item quicker. Bigger, heavier items that you want the least, you might be willing to be a little more flexible with your price, right? Stuff like that. A little more concerned about reselling those bigger, chunkier items first, the items that you don't want around as much. They're the least desirable items that you want. Maybe they're not necessarily least desirable to someone else, but stuff that you might not be using anymore. Maybe some kind of workout equipment or something like that you just don't use anymore. Or you got a new version and you don't have a need for this old whatever auto part or whatever. You're going to say, oh, well, let me try to sell it on eBay, right? So there's other reseller outlets. Like you said, eBay, in my opinion, is probably got the most visibility as far as like any kind of considered reseller, right? It's not that it's only resell; it's also new items, right? You might buy some items wholesale in some way. Make sure you're doing it legally, right? You have to be aware, but like used items for the most part are pretty open game. Right, so for the most part, I haven't really had any kind of violations or anything, but you might be aware that some products occasionally, on rare occasion, could have, maybe they have some legal standing where you can't just resell their product, stuff like that. So if that ever happens, just be aware, and I say follow all the guidelines with eBay, right, because they're your partner, right? But like I say, don't underestimate what you're listing too. You might think, why did somebody buy this little thing? Like I said, it's giving you more visibility on your eBay store, and you might be thinking, I want to get rid of this thing anyway. It might not be worth that much money. It's only worth $8 or whatever. It's a video cable or something like that. And you're thinking, well, I don't use these video cables anymore. I got a new system or this old electronic thing, this DVD player, whatever. You want to resell it, So like I say, don't underestimate it. Maybe, put it in your pile of stuff that you're considering relisting, right? Maybe you're thinking you're not sure if you're going to sell it. Maybe you make a draft, and it could be sitting there, right? Whenever you buy new stuff, especially if you have stuff shipped to you, right, save the packaging, right? Save any of the packaging. Get good at saving as much as reasonably any of the reusable elements of the packaging, the box, the bubble mailers that you get from if you buy stuff, any shipping that you receive to your home, right? And that'll give you extra packaging you can use to ship a lot of your items in, right? And then you can find a few extra, shipping supplies if you need, but for the most part, you shouldn't really have to pay for much in the way of shipping supplies. If you're doing it wise, you might buy a little tape, right? Ideally, like a heavy-duty, good packaging tape. In my opinion, it's kind of touch and go with, like, especially no-name brands. I recommend, kind of testing something, maybe a roll or two of some kind of tape before you get a lot of it, so this is the kind of tape you like, right? Maybe you like the brown packing tape, which I'm actually considering trying. I've been using the clear a bit, but there's different kinds of packing tape. But it's something to consider. The width of the pack. What kind of package? What kind of items are you selling? Do you do big packages or do you smaller packages? Right. So those are just some ideas. Like I said, save all packaging that you receive and refold boxes, fold them up, and any packaging, you put them in maybe a big box in your garage or store. Maybe you have a place, or a reasonable box. Maybe don't save every single thing, but it's enough to help you to be able to reasonably. You have a place, basement or something like that, or just some place where you can put a good amount of packaging in a reasonably small area. It might take up some space if you're selling a good amount of items, right? So just be aware. But you gotta have that pile of stuff that's bringing you some income back, reselling some stuff you don't necessarily want anymore, right? And it's not like it's all going to sell right away, right? A lot of it's going to sit around for a while. So ideally, you want to have a good inventory system, especially if you have a bit of items, right? So, maybe put all your shirts that you're selling in one area. If you have 5 or 10 shirts that you have listed, right? Or, whatever, a few electronic item. You have 3 phones, the old phones that you're trying to sell, they're listed. And you can put them in, maybe one area, one drawer, one place, have a little bit of a system. You can use what's called a SKU number in your eBay listing, and put like some kind of code there that indicates precisely where that item is. Bigger items, probably not a big problem, right? If you're selling an air fryer and it's, in the corner of the basement or your room or whatever, it's, you're probably not going to forget where it's at. But with smaller items, electronic items or something like that, you might be a little bit more aware of it, where you're putting your inventory. If you have them in boxes or drawers or some way that they're, you're not going to lose and forget about, where you can easily find any item that happens to sell, right? So that, you have it ready to go. So like when you get the item ready to go, clean, weigh, and measure, right? Clean, weigh, and measure. Take note of any labels around it, anything that's notable about it, anything that's unique about it, any features that it has, just mentally while you're cleaning it, while you're weighing it, right? Get a scale that can weigh a decent amount. You might have like a regular weight scale that you would stand on, right? That help you weigh maybe slightly heavier items. That could be reasonable. Overestimate your measurements for weighing just a little bit, not too crazy, but enough to give you a little bit of extra profit margin, right, when you do your shipping. Now, people say to do free shipping. Now, I'm probably going to get more sales faster, I imagine, but it's more unpredictable, right? It's more unpredictable. So you want to, like, if you have to do free shipping on an item that has to go all the way across the country from where you're at, it might be more shipping than you're expecting. You're thinking, oh, wait a minute, I'm actually losing a little bit of money on this. You want to know what the shipping is, then just price your item plus calculated shipping, especially in the beginning, is just my recommendation. I think a lot of other resellers might be recommending that too. I don't listen to a whole lot of other resellers, but there's certainly a good few here, like in this platform probably, that, I would listen to it here and there. And they give a lot of the good, in-depth ideas and have access to tools that I don't even, beyond anything I do. But I'm kind of more traditional. I just say, hey, do a good quality listing, right? And think about your listings ahead of time, and clean, weigh, measure, right? Maybe take good multiple extra pictures. Don't underestimate that, because like I said, you might be later on 3 months down the road thinking, looking at this listing, you're thinking, hey, that first picture ain't that good, or maybe I need to just tweak it and put a different picture, and then you're thinking, well, what do I have to pick up the item and go take another picture and set it up again? Well, maybe if you had took 3 good default pictures the first time, it would give you more likelihood. And then also, the persons that are looking at it are just going to see different angles. And you think, hey, this person really put some time into making sure they got a good amount of angles on this, pair of pants or whatever it is, right? Like I said, taking measurements at multiple angles and clothes, right? The width, the length of the top, maybe the sleeve or the pant length or the inseam, the exact inseam length, and showing that you're showing that detail so they can see those measurements, right? And like I said, little item specifics when you list, right? You want to ideally get all those little item specifics filled out as much as possible, because people might be searching for those specifics, French fringe, or, leather pants, or whatever it is that might be specific about those pants or those items that, that might be unique about them or descriptive about them. We want to have in the item specifics as much as possible, right? And when you first make your listing, maybe you're listing a few items, you're not totally sure, you want to kind of get them up. Like I said, you can edit them later. But ideally, you want to have a good, as much as you can, a comprehensive listing before you list it the first time, so it picks up in the search results. Maybe you want to make a draft, right, and fill out that draft and everything, and then have it there, and then list it, and probably maybe eBay picks up on it a little bit better, more likely to get some views quicker. But a lot of items you're selling used might not get views right away, right? They might take time, and they might sit around for a little while. So as I cycle through your listings, let's say you have 25 listings built up, or 50 listings, or maybe only 5 or 10, then you're probably not worried about it as much right away. But your older listings, the ones that don't have many views, the least amount of views, which you can put them in order. So you can look at the ones that had the least amount of views, that have been on there the longest and had the least amount of views, and you can unlist them, right? And then go to your unsold area of eBay, and then sell similar and resell, basically essentially relisting that product, but doing sell similar, so it creates, like, I think, a new listing, makes a fresh new listing, right? But before you do that, kind of maybe retweak the picture, maybe change the default picture, maybe have 2 or 3 different default pictures you took the first time, so that you could just simply change to a different picture, right? As a main picture might make a difference, right? But if you didn't do that, then you'd think, oh, I got to redo that or something like that. That's just something to think about ahead of time, right? Let me know if these tips help you. I appreciate you listening in to this video, and it's certainly an honor to have you here. course, any feedback or reacts and any likes, of course, I certainly welcome them. But, the idea is just to run you through some of the basics to take into account so you can stack the deck in your favor. You're not going to get it all at once, right? You're gonna, especially, if you're a beginner, you're going to be like the first few listings. Oh, what? I forgot that. Oh, I forgot to do that. I should have did this. Or, well, how can or what did I do here? Right? So, that's understandable. Just do your best to take good pictures, get your listing up, make it complete, like clean way, measure your items so that when you're writing your listing specifics in there, you're able to, know, hey, what kind of box is this item going to fit in? Is this item reasonably going to be, well, I'd be able to fold this item into, like a clothing item. Maybe I could put it in a bubble mailer and I could fold that up to like just a 10 by 12 inch bubble mailer that's no more than 2 inches thick, and then I know that would fit in there, and I know that the item weighs 12 ounces, right? For like a clothing item, like a sweater, for instance, maybe it weighs 12 or 16 ounces, right? And most clothing items, a lot of pants and clothes, are probably going to weigh between 8 and 16 ounces, half pound to a pound, most cases. Right? Sometimes you have something very light, right? There's different things you could send them in, like a bubble mailer is just an idea. Ideally, something, in my opinion, waterproof for especially those kinds of items where they could get mildewy or stained or something like that. But and then also, just use, I'm sure you can guess how to wrap something well. Package it well, right? So when people receive it, they say, hey, they leave you a comment, hey, the item was packaged well. And I get those comments regularly, right? The item was packaged very well. I really appreciate taking the time to package the item well. Stuff like that, right? And also short shipping time, handling time. Maybe you think, oh, I want to have the fastest time, and you think, oh, 1 day, but maybe for some reason your situation doesn't allow you to get 1 day handling done as quick, and go ahead and just do 2 day handling. Maybe you won't get quite as much, visibility for some reason, maybe, but over, maybe if you need, do 3 day handling. Maybe you're kind of more casual, but you work a lot, so you don't have a lot of time to think about it. But if you sold something, you want to be able to get it ready and ship it out in time, but not be so rushed or make the prospect feel, oh, this should have been here 2 days ago. Stuff like that, right? You want to be able to make sure you're able to get this stuff shipped out on time. But for the most part, for me, I have 2 day shipping, and like I said, calculated shipping. So you're accounting for the cost of shipping, which allows you to take offers if you want much easier because the shipping's always the same, right? If you put the free shipping, you got to take an offer, right? Then you have to worry about the cost of the shipping, and are you still making the profit margin you're looking for on that item? It's a little bit more questionable then, right? So that's the reason why I say, especially in the beginning, going with calculated shipping, right? And U.S. ground, usually USPS ground shipping, right? And they can even do pickups for you. Remember, you can go to USPS.com and schedule a pickup at most areas, probably any area. USPS.com, right? Schedule I think even a free pickup, possibly, right? Now, I think UPS also has pickup, but I think it costs a few dollars. It might cost like $14, $15 minimum, for example. But in some cases, it might be worth it with a bigger, more expensive item where maybe you can't ship if your situation doesn't allow you to just directly ship from your home, or you need that other delivery service besides just USPS. Right, but USPS ground delivery for most medium, smaller items should be good. I don't claim to be the expert on shipping in eBay, so you might even look up more specific videos for that, but I think you'll find that generally speaking, for most people, that might make sense. You're pricing your item plus the cost of shipping. Don't be afraid, hey, some people are going to be looking for free shipping. I get it, and stuff like that. But in the beginning, you want to make sure you're accounting for your cost of goods. So don't do free shipping until you really understand what you're doing, is my opinion on it. So there's just a few things there, and I appreciate you being here once again. Listening in just for a few minutes to me ramble about this concept. Maybe it helps you to start listing or listing more efficiently. But like you say, having your phone ready, right, to take a good amount of pictures on each item, that's kind of critical. Is you make the listing on your phone, right? Start the listing on your phone, right? You do as much of the specifics as you can on the eBay mobile app, right? The eBay app, you take the pictures and you upload it to the app. You're making a listing on the app, right? So when you make that listing, you're gonna save it as a draft when you're done filling out as much of it as you can, right? Which is the item specifics, the title, right? Your category. That's important. Make sure the category it's going in looks appropriate. But most likely, it probably is most of the time. Maybe you're making your listing fresh based on the title that you're creating for this item. The item is Like it's, a brown, medium-sized, short sleeve, collared shirt, men's shirt, right? I want to put those kind of keywords in the title, right? And then maybe the brand. Maybe the brand goes before or after those descriptive words. As many of the descriptive words I might want to put. Is it in brown, pocketed, collared, like whatever, the elements that are descriptive about it. But they only have up to 80 characters. So like I say, at least right now, unless they change it, but 80 characters for your description. So you want to compound the most descriptive elements of your item in that description, and you try to use all 80 characters, right? Because those are more keywords you can fit with every, try to use many of those 80 characters as you reasonably can for your item. Now thinking about the next thing, you want to take that item and just, like I said, once you got everything filled out, you're filling out the shipping, you're taking into account the size of the container that it might be fitting in. Is it a box or a bubble mailer? And then taking that, and like I said, you measure the item usually a bit, showing measurements of the item, not just clothes, but virtually any item you list. Almost any item, unless they really know what it is, like it's a Nintendo game or whatever, then obviously, someone's probably, what's the measurements on that? But for the most part, have a tape measure to take those extra few pictures that are showing your item next to being measurement, with a tape measure of some kind, for example. So this will, give your customer a better idea. Hey, is this really the size that they're expecting? A lot of times, that could be a misunderstanding about the size of an item. I'm sure we've all done it before. You buy a bottle of whatever on eBay or Amazon or something like that, and you're thinking it's going to be something, and then you get it and it's, oh wait, this is much more than what I expected, or this wasn't the size I was expecting. So that's just something to take into account. Those measurements can be a good factor, and you might put those measurements in the description too, but maybe that's not a strict rule. Maybe you don't always get that right away. Maybe you don't even always get that. It's not always super important, but it's ideal to have your listing as complete as possible. So if you can take into account, and more things you can take into account ahead of time, right? Taking some measurements and then knowing what kind of box, hey, this will fit into a 10 by 6 by 6 box. And, I have determined that, right? Or no more than that, right? So like I said, overestimate a little bit. If you think, hey, I might need a 16 by 16 box, and, put that, because that way the shipping is calculated to, you're always covering your cost of shipping. Right, and even maybe building a little extra profit. Maybe you oversize a little bit, and then you go to actually set the shipping measurements for that item when it says that they bought it. Then it's saying create a label for this item, and then it's asking you what are the actual measurements of the package that you end up packaging. What is the actual measurements and weight that you end up with when you package it? Right. So ideally, you want to use minimal packaging, but at the same time package well. That's the reason why you want to account for a little bit of extra weight and measurements in when they're asking for your shipping specifics, right? You're saying, hey, well, I'm going to give this an extra 2 inches or for the package just in case, because even though it says 18 inches, I might need to put some extra padding or whatever. It's just over accounting a little bit, but not too crazy, because you don't want the shipping to look too crazy to the buyer, right? You don't want it to be really unfairly over excessive, right? So you want to treat the buyer fairly. Same time, you want to also, make into account, handling use items. There's handling, right? It's not just the, shipping. It's also a little bit of handling. A lot of times, just cleaning item up, getting it ready to ship right, and all that stuff is, a little bit of handling. So you're kind of taking into account for that a little bit by making sure your shippings are overestimated at least a drop. If a shirt says, it's 9 ounces, I'm going to put 12 ounces. Or maybe even if it says 8 ounces when I weigh it, I might put 12 ounces because the packaging might tip it over 8 ounces, right? But if it's a good, reasonably under 8 ounces somehow, it's a really light item, it's only 6 ounces, I'm probably just going to put 8 ounces, right? But, or if it's a pound, if it's an 11 ounce item, it's not quite a pound, it's like, 3/4 of a pound, I might be thinking, or, even less than that, it's a little less than 3/4 of a pound, but I might still go ahead and put a pound, right? Because, the box, maybe I have to put a little bit of packing around it. Maybe it's a ceramic item. I have to put some extra bubble or paper around, and that gives me an extra 1/2 ounce to 1 ounce and tips me over that one of those margins that makes the item cost a little bit more for shipping, right? So take that into account. And also larger items, they can be significantly more once they get over a certain size, like I think 22 inches for the USPS ground, for instance. then in that case, you might consider looking at one of the other shipping methods for offering. Like UPS might be cheaper with certain bigger sized items. So there's something to take into account. Don't get too crazy in the beginning if you're just listing your first few medium or smaller sized items around your home, basic stuff, appliances even, a blender or something like that is not too big. I mean, probably weighs, 5, 10, 15 pounds. And, you make sure you know the weight of it. So when you're putting it in the shipping, you're saying, hey, well, this item weighs 8 pounds. I'm going to put 9 pounds because it might be a little, maybe make sure you have all the items that go with that part, the parts that go with that item, right? Ready to go. So you can take the pictures with all the components of that item. If it doesn't have certain components, maybe let that know. Put that in the description. Hey, it doesn't, such and such not included. The power cord not included, or no batteries, or whatever element that you feel like might be important to mention, so that they understand when they're getting the item, they're getting, what they see is what they get. Maybe that's a good thing to put. Or item as shown in pictures, or fully functional, good condition as shown in images. Right? So please see images closely. Stuff like that. Get your prospect to really review. That way they understand what they buy before they buy it, right? And that way you're more likely that your sale sticks, right? Personally, I like to offer 30-day money back, like guarantee, almost like no questions asked, unless it's just blatantly damaged or something, like they damage it or something like that. But other than that, they can ship that. But at the same time, the buyer does pay for the return shipping, right? The buyer does pay for the return shipping. So that's just the way I do it. So that means I test something for the most part, unless it's like defective, doesn't work as described, it's not as described, right? We don't want that. You don't want not as described. You want your descriptions to be accurate. If something has a hole or a stain in it, you put that in the description, you put pictures of it, stuff like that. Make it clear, so that way your prospect understands what they're getting, more likely to have positive feedback. Luckily, I haven't dropped below 100% so far myself. That's only out of a couple hundred items, which I imagine there's people selling a lot more than that, a lot quicker, that are trying to do eBay more seriously. Even I do it kind of part-time, because I do other businesses as well. But the thing is to kind of help you move through some inventory you don't want anymore, right? Maybe get good at listing, and you could make more of an income stream out of it. It could be a second income that could be reasonably an extra 10 or 20,000 a year or whatever, maybe 10 or 20,000 a month if you have some kind of great inventory. Maybe you're a farmer and you're thinking about a way to sell some stuff that you have that you've been, maybe it's a way for you to be an outlet for you to sell some wholesale items that you have in your stock or something like that, right? But like I said, for a lot of people, they probably have a lot of old stuff around that you just don't necessarily want, or you want to replace, or you want to update, you want to get some newer stuff, or you got a new theme going on, or you're moving and you got a bunch of stuff that you're thinking about throwing out. Maybe don't throw it out necessarily, but start a pile. Maybe have a place where you can keep a good pile of stuff. You keep, if they're really big items, maybe you need a lot of storage. But if they're just kind of medium-sized home items, you can probably keep most of it in a good corner, depending on how big of a place you have. But like I said, you want to kind of keep it organized enough to where you can always find the items that, if it sells, you can find the item quickly, right? There's just a few tips, like a few concepts here. It's just about the mindset too, as well as like, load it up with a good amount of items, kind of quickly. Get good at listing a few items, kind of briskly, right? Like you say, the clean way to measure is the first initial things I think of when I see an item that I'm going to list it. Maybe I have in a pile of a few things I'm planning on listing, right? And I want to kind of, list 2 to 5 items real quick for the night, or I don't want to go too crazy, right? I have a quick, easy way to set up my, that way I can take pictures of it, good pictures, and most of the times a white background, right? For example, so I might have a couple ways to do that, like a light box and a whiteboard. Like I have one here in the background. It's just white cardboard, to be honest, which you can find. But a good clean look. It doesn't have to be absolute white, but same time, pretty good clean look. So the background looks decent. Same time, I'm not sure about every element that helps you get more listings in like Google shopping, for example, but you want your eBay listing to show up in as many places as possible to sell faster. Right. There's also, so that's like I say, making a good searchable listing, gradually getting better at making a more comprehensive listing where you have all the item specifics as much as possible completed, or you said you took the time to notice on the tag. That way you got to the descriptions, you could easily fill in a lot of it. This is made in India. Oh, I know it was a size medium. Oh, I know it had a stretch feature to it. It had it had a pocket. A few of those elements you can quickly do without having to, because you took them into account while you were cleaning and weighing and measuring them and just quickly examining the item from a holistic perspective. effective, right? So like I said, using this cell phone to make the listing, and once you've filled as much as if you can out, saving it as a draft, right? Saving it as a draft. And ideally, then, if you have access to a computer, a desktop, or a laptop, then going to the draft pages and maybe saving a few bookmarks in a bookmarks folder on your browser, like Chrome or Firefox or Edge or whatever browser that you use, DuckDuckGo or Opera. There's other browsers, but I think a lot of people use Chrome and Firefox, right? This is for example. So they have ways you can make folders right on the top of the browser, favorites, right? Make a folder with just certain groups of pages. Like maybe you want to have a folder with just your eBay drafts page. So as soon as you click it open, it's going right to your drafts that you have, right? So you just save something to draft on your phone, then you go and open up the folder with just your drafts and your unsold pages of unsold items, and your active items, and that way you have 3 or 4 or 5 tabs open of just the key pages that you want to have open for that process. And you have them in one folder so that you could just right-click on the folder, maybe like in Google Chrome, right-click on the folder and just say Open All Tabs. And it opens all 3 or 4 or 5 of those tabs to those important pages that you use for that process, like relisting or, drafts that you've just saved from your phone that you took a listing and made the pictures and everything like that, and you did a bit of the description while you were on the app, the eBay app, right? And you're making the listing, and then you save it as a draft before you totally list it, right? And then go to your computer and go to that draft and just quickly open up the draft, and it's going to allow you to do more edits. And let me know if this is helping you in any way, right? This is not like expert information, right? There's many people with other insights, so I appreciate anybody adding any insights that, certainly try to, of course, I recommend doing your best to be accurate, right, about anything that you had experience with that might be different or a correction to anything I'm saying, of course. But, they save the draft there and then open up that draft on your computer ideally, right? And you could finish the listing from your cell phone and it's still, like you won't have any potential to sell it or something like that. I'm just saying if you open up the draft on your computer, it will probably open up a few more options, a few more fields that you might be able to fill in specifically about that item that it might not be available on the app, on the eBay app, right? So like I might open it up and allow me to write a better description of the condition, right? Or just different elements, right, that I could see there, like pulling up the draft before I totally list it, pulling up the draft on my computer, right, pulling up on the laptop or the desktop, the full version of the browser, the full eBay website, right? So then once I've really examined the listing and got it more comprehensive, maybe I'm doing a little bit of research about that item. Maybe I'm using like, ChatGPT or Google Shopping and Amazon and eBay to find some descriptions or elements about that item, like the UPC number possibly. If the item might have a UPC code I can find for it, if it's accurate, I can put that into the listing. eBay helps to identify that, gives you more visibility because of that, right? So maybe there's some item numbers on the clothing tag, like the RN number or CA number or style number, right? And I can, on the desktop version of when I'm finishing the listing, I can add extra fields of item descriptions. I can say, and I can customize. I can say this is the CA number. And then I can say this is what this field is. It indicates a CA, and whatever that number, I don't even know what that is. It's just on a lot of clothing items. CA, an RN number or ACID number, right? So there ain't a field already for them default with eBay. eBay has some default like model number, country of manufacturer, stuff like that. Sometimes that stuff's unknown and you can't find that with certain items. But a lot of times you can, right? Maybe you use like ChatGPT to get some accurate answers. Or maybe you use another listing that you see for that item in another store like eBay or another Amazon listing that you can see. But be wary. Sometimes their descriptions aren't very well done, right? So you get better at this description finding and, you just get better at it so we can do it quicker, right? But in the beginning, it's probably a little rocky. You're thinking, I got to open up these websites and do this and that. Not that it's so much, but you're just doing a little more research on it before you list it to find maybe you can find what are the dimensions of such and such product. Or, what's the UPC code for this product? Or, what size is this shoe? Is size 10 in US? What size is that in Australian size? Because they're asking for that on the eBay listing, right? And you get more of that stuff. So that way, more likely, Maybe someone was here from, Australia, and they're in America and they're trying to buy an Australian shoe, but they're used to Australian sizes. They want to see that when they look at it, right? It could help you sell your item quicker. So why not get as much of the description items in there, item specifics in there as possible? Like I said, before you finally list it on your computer, right? You opening up those draft. You just saved it on your phone, a draft. You saved it as a draft. You didn't totally list the item, right? Got as much of it as you could on the app. But then when you get on the computer, you're opening up that draft and you're doing more to it to really kind of tighten it up a little bit more. Nail it in, right? If that makes sense. So you have a good listing. Then you list the item, right? And then let the listing go live. Right now, and then you can also relist old items too that maybe they've been around for a while. They haven't gotten many listings, especially the ones with the least amount of listings that have been there the longest. You might decide to unlist them and then sell similar, where you go to unsold section of your eBay account, right, and sell similar, resell that item, but sell similar. Don't just relist it for optimal chance of having a new listing. Right, but like I said, before you finalize the new listing of it, the sell similar version of that same listing that you had, right, it's the same pictures, maybe you do need to update some elements of it. Maybe you do decide you want to take a couple more pictures that you didn't take the first time because you didn't take enough pictures like I was saying to do, right, and take a good amount of extra pictures, right, and then like the eBay only allows you to do like up to 24 pictures, so you want to be somewhat selective, right, it's not like you want to totally overcrowd it with, a bunch of pointless pictures or duplicates or something like that. You want to be somewhat selective. Same time, like I said, with those items that you don't think need that many pictures, still take a good amount of pictures. Take extra pictures. Take a couple of extra. If you take 2 or 3 or 4 pictures that you would say would definitely be good main pictures to put in the main part of the main profile, image of your listing, right? And then later on, you can twist it around if you need to easily when you're relisting or selling similar of that same listing, right? And then putting out maybe checking out the specifics. Is there any additional specific I could put in here that I didn't put in the first time? Is there anything I could do to improve or increase the visibility of this listing before listing it, or selling similar and then finalizing that resell, right? To list it again, to make it go live again with those new listing settings. And then going back to your unsold area and then deleting it from there. Just confirming, though, that it's definitely live before you do, because otherwise you have to rebuild the listing if you accidentally delete it totally, right? You want it to be in your unsold area so you can just simply hit resell. And like I said, you might still be tweaking it, might even add more images to it. Maybe you take more pictures of the item, you feel like you can do that, but otherwise, overall, you might be just doing some more, looking at adding more item description elements. At the same time, like I said, item specifics. At the same time, eBay might tell you, hey, these items need more item specific, and you only know so many specifics about the item that you can even get, or, you can figure out. So just do what you can, right? Do what you can. Like I said, maybe, like ChatGPT can be helpful, right? With this product, what year was this product made? This model number, right? And that's something to take into account, like cleaning away. You might be reselling an old TV or a monitor or something like that, and you want to notice what's the model number, stuff like that, know where to find it at least. And like I said, at that time, when you're doing the finalizing of a draft on the computer, you still have the item handy. You didn't necessarily put it away right away, right, or put it in the inventory necessarily or your stock. But rather you still have those few items handy, right? Now you're on the computer listing these 3, 4, 5, 10 items that you just maybe made the draft for each one, or maybe you're just doing one at a time, making the draft, and then going to your computer and doing the listing and making the listing, right? Shouldn't take you very long. Might take you, 5 to 10 minutes, maybe a little longer with some items, especially with items that you don't know what these items are, or you're barely, it's an item's been sitting in your garage, well, you got to clean it up and get it ready. That could take you a few minutes, right? So, but, the idea is to be swift about it to a degree. Ideally, you have a station totally set up, ready to go. Right, but sometimes you might be in an area where you have to set up your station, where you have to put your boards in place to have the white background and whatever elements. But ideally, you're having some of it set up, as much as you can ahead of time. Ideally, you have a total station that's ready to go. You just take your item, put them right there, take the pictures real quickly, and you know exactly what you're doing, right? But that's going to probably take you a little practice, right? Take your pictures up close. Take your pictures good the first time, so you don't have to do a lot of editing. Right? You don't have to do a lot of editing of your images. So this is just some ideas here. Like I said, let me know if they're helpful. I certainly appreciate you listening in. I'm just kind of rambling, but maybe some of it helps you in your journey to help you do some reselling, right? I mean, I wouldn't necessarily count on reselling because it's just like any sales, right? It has its ups and downs, right? You'll have times when you feel like nothing's selling, right? That's the reason why you want to kind of be a little active on your eBay consistently on the app or on the browser, because eBay sees like you're on there listing stuff, right? And it seems like they give you more visibility when you're more active on the site, right? If you just list a few things and you don't go do anything for 2 weeks, it might not be getting as much visibility. But if you want to sell something like every day, right? Every day or two, or maybe multiple items some days, right? Depends how many items you're listing and how desirable they are. Some items take time to sell because there's just not necessarily a ton of demand for them, right? Just because the sell-through rate might be low doesn't necessarily mean to not list it or sell it. You really never know what anybody might be searching for or run across at any time. Virtually every item I've sold has been for, like, the used items, like, I practically like almost new price, not quite new. I mean, I don't like to go over crazy with it, but some item I'm not necessarily thinking about selling, I would sell it if I got a decent price for it. Then maybe I'll list it for that price. If they, they buy it for a decent price, and hey, I'm making the money back, whatever, I might decide to buy a different version or something like that, or an upgrade version. Maybe I'm just using the money for something else, right? So that's giving me more items to resell. But once again, I would say, like, before doing that final listing, when you're doing it on the computer or the laptop, make sure you do a little bit more research before you finalize the listing to get more of those item descriptions in there, right? UPC number is definitely a good thing to get whenever possible. The UPC item number for a product. If you're selling a new product, or a lot of times, many times, not even a used product like a book. Books have a lot of times a media. You want to ship that by multimedia mail if you can. Not every type of book can go, but educational stuff, literature. Maybe not like movies, like blockbuster movies and stuff like that. They probably not. I don't know if they would count as media mail. Probably not, but. Literature, the classics, of course, books, stuff like that, educational, any kind of educational literature, probably be able to go by media mail, right, which would be considered a lower shipping rate for your customer, right, give them a lower shipping rate. But make sure you price your item accordingly if you're selling. Like, I just recently sold an not Anne Rand, Diary of Anna Frank, right, book, right, Diary of Anna Frank book, and sold it for like $35 plus shipping, right? So that's just an example. The book has what's called an ISBN number on it as well, which can identify that specific book, right? So that's what if you're making a book and a book listing on eBay, it's going to ask you for the ISBN number. Ideally, you'll have it. Some old books might not have even an ISBN number. I'm not sure when that system started, but most books, post-publishings, have what's called an ISBN number. I think other types of media might have an ISBN or similar type of number. Like if you're selling DVDs or something like that, they might have some similar type of thing. But, like I said, the books, ideally you're getting the specifics. Is this book a fiction or a nonfiction? Some cases you might not be sure, what is this book, fiction or nonfiction? Or, I might ask you all these different specifics. You might not necessarily get all the specifics. You don't know everything about the book, but what you can know in there. Maybe make the listing, let it sit there for a while. Maybe it goes live. You don't get every perfect element to it done perfect the first time. It's an item that you're just not really that familiar with. But let it go live for a while. Maybe somebody will buy it or look at it. Same time, you're getting more listings up in the meantime. But you're going to sell something. Get like 5 or 10 listings up pretty quick, or daily, consistently, right? Then you're probably going to be selling something pretty quick, right? Don't sell stuff too cheap. Don't find yourself losing money. Like I said, calculated shipping, so you're definitely making, your money for any shipping and handling, right? So I'm trying to think of any other things I would throw in there right now, right? There's updates I could think of, maybe new things I might learn from other resellers or just for more reselling. It might be helpful in some ways. If you want to make bigger money, though, I would say you're probably going to want to get some wholesale and access to more inventory better. People go do reselling. They might go to thrift stores and stuff like that, garage sales. I'm sure that can definitely be profitable, but it's kind of a hunt, right? And same thing, if you're like finding wholesale items, and there's some kind of resale of some product that you could legitimately buy wholesale and resale, maybe with a reasonable profit margin that it's consistent, that might be a good idea. But like if you buy things that are on sale more, right, and maybe you have some money in your eBay fund account, right, that you kind of keep there from the stuff that you sell. Not buying too zealously, but as you buy new stuff, you ideally buy stuff that's on sale that could be relisted for maybe a slightly higher price. You make a little bit of profit off of it. So that way, you buy good items, stuff that has resale value, more like name brands oftentimes, right? Instead of buying an off-brand, maybe consider looking for a name brand version of something you're thinking about buying. Not just because you want to have name brands, but because they more likely have more resale value in many cases, right? But that's not a strict rule. People look for quality, right? They might be thinking, hey, this ain't a brand I know, but I can see clearly this is a quality item. Other people might be thinking, hey, I'm not sure really what would be the best brand to get on this item. Let me go with a brand I trust, right? So, computer equipment. Someone might be, hey, they want to look up Hewlett Packard. That's just, they generally trust Hewlett. They're not sure what kind of SSD drive to get. So they're, whatever item it is, they might be thinking, I'm going to go with the brand I trust. Even a clothing item, they think, I'm going to get a shirt. Well, I could go with a no brand shirt. A lot of times people are willing to test that kind of stuff, willing to try a new kind of something, a new type of meal, a new type of shirt. But other times they're more concerned that they get just the right thing the first time, right, as well. So there's different types of buyers in the market. But hey, this is Mike here rambling for a while, let me know if you happen to listen to any of this, get any tips out of it, one thing that maybe did help you out of the video. I appreciate you commenting below. Say, hey, this one thing, that was something that really kind of gave me some insight or any kind of help with, because, there's a bunch of little areas there that I think the idea is to stack the deck in your favor. Don't expect to get it perfect, right? Expect to get it perfect. But like I said, listing quickly, the mindset of getting your stuff on the marketplace pretty briskly, so you have a good amount of stuff listed, so you're not necessarily expecting to sell any one item. You want to sell this one item, oh well, it's like, like I had a juicer, I'm thinking, oh well, this juicer, it costs like $300, I'm thinking, well, if I want to sell it, do I want to sell it, ideally I want to sell it quick, but I also want to sell it for a reasonable amount. I don't want to sell it too cheap, right? So at the same time, it might be a slightly bigger item. I'm willing to be a little more flexible about it. I don't necessarily have to get top dollar about it, but same time, it might have to sit around for a little while. So, understand that I might be listing a good amount of things, and the idea is that, I'm listing a lot of stuff. So at any given time, something is selling. It may not be the exact item that I might be thinking, oh, I want to sell this thing right away, right? But something is selling. That's giving me extra money to put back into, replacing certain things. It's like a fund for buying any new things you have. Maybe potentially more of a profit margin for savings, if that's what you're wanting to make it into. But for now, I can think of other things. If you did appreciate the video, I appreciate your feedback. Like I said, maybe check out my other videos and more tips. There might be a video that shows up at the end of this video here, maybe for some more ideas. Certainly appreciate you checking them out. And in the meantime, maybe keep an eye out for the next video, and maybe check out the next video. Maybe check out some of my other videos in the meantime, and let me know. Drop me a line. Appreciate you being here. See you next time. Have a great one. Bye-bye.